Hi everyone, Arnold here, santamuertemagic.com. Thank you so much for tuning in. The topic of today's video is curses and hexes as arrows in a quiver. This video was inspired by a question I received from a Patreon supporter who was asking for advice on overcoming or corrupting the power of another person's amulet or magic protection. I thought it was an interesting question, so I wanted to discuss it here. So, if the goal is to overcome a person's defenses or to corrupt an amulet, we can assume that our intent is negative in nature. We want to send a curse or a hex to a target, and we want them to feel the power of that negative energy, and we don't want something like an amulet or a circle of magic protection to stand in our way. In one of my most recent books, Santa Muerte Curses and Hexes, I discussed the idea of arrows in a quiver. Basically, that if you are going up against someone who may have spiritual protections in place, perhaps they themselves are devotees of Santa Muerte or practitioners of another form of magic, then you may need to change your frame of mind from thinking of a single curse or hex as a magic bullet and thinking of curses or hexes in general as arrows in a quiver. When an archer would go into battle, back when wars were fought with archers, they did not go into battle with a single arrow. They carried multiple arrows in their quivers, and quite often, when they had an enemy in their sights, they would send a barrage of arrows, one after the other, toward the same target. They understood that even if the first arrow landed on target, if they were going up against trained soldiers with their own shields and armor in place, the job of that first arrow was not necessarily to land a kill shot. Sometimes it happened, but that wasn't always the purpose. The purpose of landing that first arrow was often to weaken the defenses of their target, or at the very least, distract their target, throw them off kilter, or stun them to make room for the real damage that was coming by way of the second and third arrows. In thinking about curses and hexes this way, the best advice I can give for overcoming another person's spiritual defenses would be to launch a barrage of curses and hexes in the direction of your target. On the website, santamuertemagic.com, I actually share an anti-defense hex. Just search for those words and you'll find it. That is intended to be the first arrow in your barrage of arrows toward your enemy. It is intended to temporarily weaken the spiritual defenses of your target so the effects of a follow-on curse or hex are all the more powerful. So, for example, if you are serious about causing magical harm to your target, then you might start with an anti-defense hex, follow that up with a cursed gift petition, which you can find on the website as well. Just search for cursed gift, and then wrap it all up with the creation of an enemy destruction seal, which you can also find by searching on the website. Now, one question you might be asking is, well, why is the barrage of negative energy necessary? If Santa Muerte wants to fulfill our intent, then why do we need to stack or layer our curses or hexes? Isn't Santa Muerte powerful enough to make that first shot a kill shot? My answer to that is, I don't know. I do not have all the answers. Magic is very much an art, it is not a science, and when you throw into that mix the power of Santa Muerte, a force that we do not command, a force whose reasons are her own, and who needs no permission to exercise her will, that discussion becomes even more vague. That being said, I do have some ideas, just based on my experience and intuition. So if you will tolerate a bit of pontification, it is possible we live in a world where Santa Muerte respects, at least to some degree, the intent and spiritual protection efforts of other people. Santa Muerte, as death itself, could very easily destroy gods or magical systems that have nothing to do with her, but the fact that they are allowed to persist might show us that she allows them to persist for a reason, and by extension that there is something about them that she likes or respects. Remember, there are devotees of Santa Muerte who hold all types of religious and spiritual beliefs. Santa Muerte accepts us all. It is possible that Santa Muerte may not be convinced that you actually want what you are asking for. If you're just going through the motions of casting a curse petition because you're upset, that could be perceived as you're just blowing off steam. And so by sending a second or third curse or hex to your enemy, you are showing Santa Muerte that no, in fact, you do want what you are asking for. Another reason why you might be wise to send more than one arrow to your target is because remember that the nature of Santa Muerte is balance. She is the great equalizer. She is often depicted with the scales of justice. But the energy of our world, the actions and motivations of everyone around us are constantly in flux. We live in a sea of constant change. So just because a balancing may not be justified at this point in time, it does not mean that circumstances won't change to justify a balancing in the future. So while your first arrow may not be justified, your second or third arrow may land at a time when it is justified. Another possible reason for the power of stacking or layering curses or hexes could have less to do with Santa Muerte and more to do with the target of your curse or hex. Generally, magic charms and magical protection rituals do seem to have a shelf life. In my experience, magic is often not a set and forget kind of operation. On my website and in my books, I often recommend praying over a magic charm from time to time just to recharge it and to reinforce your original intent and to show that your original intent is still your intent. From my experience, the magic of a charm tends to wear off if you ignore it or if you forget why you created it. So, since it is possible for people to let their amulets or charms or protection magic grow weak over time by ignoring them or by forgetting to recharge them, then sending multiple curse or hex petitions, one after another, can essentially help you break through whatever protective barriers were once established. Something that grows weaker over time, the more you hit it, the weaker it will become until it eventually breaks. Ultimately, every curse or hex petition that you perform is an expression of your intent, and it is intent that gives every petition power. You cannot expect to achieve what you cannot articulate. So taking the time to craft and focus on your intent is the first step in any successful magical petition. And in magic, in my experience, there is no such thing as too much intent. We may not have all the answers as to the mechanics of how all this stuff works. We may not know why Santa Muerte decides to grant some petitions and not others, but we do know that there are some aspects of this process that we do have control over. We have control over our intent. We have control over the number of petitions that we make. Going back to that original question that inspired this video, how can we corrupt an amulet or weaken a person's spiritual defenses? My answer is that we can treat our curses and hexes as arrows in a quiver. And if the first arrow does not land, we do not give up. We send another arrow and another, and as many as we think is necessary until we get what we want or we decide to stop pursuing what we want. With that, I think I'll start wrapping up the video. Think of your curses and hexes as arrows in a quiver. I don't know why Santa Muerte sometimes wants us to ask for the same thing more than once, but it does seem to help. In my experience, experiment with it for yourself. Petition for a curse or hex, see what happens. If you think sending another petition would help, then send another. You can never put too much intention toward your objectives. Hopefully I've explained everything clearly, but as always, send me a message if you have any questions. You can get in touch through the contact form on the website. There's also the Patreon message system and the Discord chat server. Thanks so much for tuning in. Until next time, bye.